Aloha, everyone. My name is Rob Hack. I'm from the Hawaii Pacific Export Council. We are a nonprofit in Honolulu tasked with helping and educating companies on all aspects of exporting. We put on this series of seminars, and actually during the pandemic, they're all webinars due to a generous grant we received from DBET, who in turn receives a grant from SBA in Washington, D.C. So we'd like to thank them for those grants that allow us to do this program. This is the webpage of the Hawaii Pacific Export Council. It's hawaiiexportsupport.com. And then I'd like to point you to our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and search for Hawaii Pacific Export Council, you can find a library of these webinars and past in-person seminars that we recorded. And we go back now about 5 years of videos. Some of them are absolutely fantastic. They're all good, but some of them are particularly great, and I encourage you to check them out for various aspects of exporting. So as I mentioned, DBET is a key driver behind the HiSTEP program, and I'd like to ask Jamie Lum from DBET to say a few words about the HiSTEP program. I would also note that this is the webinar you're attending today is our last one for the 2021 cycle, and we have 2022 coming up starting later in this calendar year, and we'll cover through October of 2022. If you have any suggestions of topics you would like us to cover, please email me or text me and let me know what you're thinking. Jamie, please.
Mahalo, Rob, and aloha and good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us for our final HiSTEP seminar or webinar for this HiSTEP year. I'm Jamie Lum with DBET, and as Robert mentioned, we do receive a grant from the Small Business Administration for the what is called the State Trade Expansion Program, or in Hawaii, we've branded it as HiSTEP, the Hawaii State Trade Expansion Program. And we do work with partners such as Rob and HPEC, with the Small Business Development Centers, with, of course, our Hawaii District Office of SBA, with Innovate Hawaii under HTDC, with the Women's Business Center at the Mink Center, with the Veterans Business Center, and a number of other partners to put this program together. So what is HiSTEP? HiSTEP is an export development program that is designed to increase the amount of exports and the dollars earned through Hawaii, export of Hawaii goods and services. The program also is trying to encourage more companies to export from Hawaii, get into the global marketplace, and finally to also penetrate more markets out there with Hawaii goods and services. So we have three, and thank you, Rob, for putting up our HiSTEP webpage, which is under our invest.hawaii.gov under the exporting tab. But we have three components of the program. We have our HiSTEP Export Readiness Program, of which this webinar is a part of that. So working with HPEC, excuse me, we put on monthly seminars, webinars that address various export specific topics, and also looking at particular markets. So we've had some, as Rob said, some very good programs over the years. This year particularly, we had a lot of people comment about the one that was done in Japan, on the Japan market, I think back in June or so. So as Rob stated, on the HPEC website, all of these webinars, and when we had in-person sessions, they were recorded. They're on HPEC's website as well as our website. We have a library of all of the past webinars and seminars that we've done. So please, I encourage you to check those out. Also part of the Export Readiness Program is the one-on-one business advising and mentoring that you would receive with our partners. And that happens when you register. There's a registration form. Basically, it's an enrollment into the program. And once you enroll, then we ask some questions about your company, and then we will put you in touch with one of our partner organizations for some consultation and to help you looking at your export strategies to see if you need to put one together or if you need to perhaps tweak or strengthen the one that you might already have. So that's all part of export readiness. The second component we have is our Hawaii pavilions. We go into major trade shows and we recruit a number of Hawaii companies and exhibit together in a Hawaii pavilion. So as you know, with the last year and a half or so with COVID, there have been restrictions on travel, as well as a lot of, and none of these trade shows have been occurring. So that's why we have today's virtual trade shows. So we are actually for 2022 planning to go to some trade shows. We're partnering, we're not only doing some ourselves, we're partnering with Hawaii Department of Agriculture to do some food shows in Japan. So just be on the lookout, continue to check our website. So as you know, as things change, if things need to be modified, we'll change our plans. But as of now, we do have plans to do a few in-person trade shows that are on the calendar for now in 2022. Our last component is our company assistance, where companies can apply for up to $10,000 to help implement portions of their export development plan. If you are interested in this, I urge you to look at the requirements. There are some eligibility requirements that are slightly different from just the overall eligibility for HiSTEP. The main being that we are looking at companies that have revenue of $200,000 and more to be eligible for this program. So please take a look at that. We currently are still accepting applications until September 30th for this current HiSTEP year. So if you have any questions about that, I'll put my email address in the chat when I'm done. But again, encourage you to look at our website for more of the details of this program. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and email me. I think I'll stop for now. And
that's great.
Again,
thank you,
turn it back
Jamie.
to
I
Rob.
would
Thank
suspect
you.
that most of the attendees by now are on your mailing list, but if you're not, this is where you could subscribe to the mailing list. And one other quick comment, some people have asked me about the export readiness program and the HiSTEP registration and what is the cost to be involved in that. And I've told them that it's absolutely zero, but can you confirm that?
Yes, correct. To enroll in HiSTEP, there is no cost and there's really no obligation. What happens is, like I said, when you fill out a registration form and you submit it, we'll put you in touch with one of our partner organizations. And if that's all you do, talk with one of whoever we partner you with, and maybe you go away with some information and continue to work on your export plan, that's fine. There's no obligation to participate in any other part of the HiSTEP program, but we want to start with information about your company and know where you're at in terms of your export experience.
Great. Okay, thank you very much, Jamie. Our first speaker in virtual trade shows is Brittany Hyde. She's also a board member of the Hawaii Pacific Export Council, and we're lucky to have her. She's a co-founder of Mana Up. I'm sure that most attendees here have heard about Mana Up, but maybe Brittany, you could just give us a 30 seconds update on what is Mana Up and what's going on in the upcoming cohort, and then tell us your experience with virtual trade shows and what are you guys doing in terms of best practices and what have you. So welcome, Brittany.
Thank you so much, Rob. Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany. I'm co-founder of Mana Up. Rob, is it okay if I share my screen and go through a presentation real quick?
Please.
Okay, great. It's not letting me. So Mana Up is an accelerator program for local Hawaii consumer products. So that includes everything from food, fashion, beverages, home, art, all of those kinds of things that are elevating the brand of Hawaii and intend to grow to global markets. So, we really come at this from a sense of what brings economic development for our state. Let me just present here. And what can bring, meaningful job opportunities, sustainable tourism where tourists can integrate with locally owned businesses, diversification of the economy, as well as industry that can increase exports, and economical use of thousands of acres of open agricultural land. So integration with those farmers to increase cash flows and increase profitability. Quick just overview on the portfolio. They're 100% headquartered in Hawaii, 80% manufacture in Hawaii, 60%, which is all the food, beverage, and beauty brands that are in the portfolio, source raw ingredients locally. We've got 47 Native Hawaiian owned businesses and 61% female founded and led businesses. So it's a really amazing group of people. And I think it's a demonstration of what happens when you really invest in our local talent. In 2020, 51 companies in the portfolio had 43 million in total revenue, 17% median growth rate, which is pretty incredible given that it was 2020, 315 jobs and 18 million in sales outside of Hawaii, which shows just the value of exports outside of Hawaii. Sorry, it's just my 5-year-old starts kindergarten next week and told him to leave. So just transitioning now into the virtual event sector and virtual trade shows. So it definitely is a new trend of last year. Everybody pretty much on a dime had to switch of how are we going to do trade shows, especially in the food space, where we can't do tastings, we can't do, all those kinds of things that the trade show sector really thrived on. And, it's like a COVID nightmare shoving, that many people into one space. So everyone had to adjust and do something different. So many of them, including Expo West and Fancy Food Show, have created a virtual component made in Hawaii, which you guys will learn more about, did a virtual trade show last year. This is not a trend that's going away though. So the virtual event sector is expected to grow nearly tenfold over the next decade to over $700 billion. So that's really incredible. I think, just one insight is that it's not just something for 2020 or 2021. This is something that's going to continue to evolve and grow. That's especially important for us in Hawaii because it gives us access to so many more trade shows than we would normally have access to or want to put our resources toward, right? I mean, it's thousands of dollars just to get ourselves, our team, our products, the booth fees, all of that sort of stuff to all of these different places around the world. So the fact that we have access to virtual trade shows and it is going to be a trend going forward is, I think, very exciting. Virtual trade shows, this is no news to anyone, but it's the online versions of trade shows. I think the thing to really note though is that they have different formats. So some, they are literally like you create your own little page within the trade show that people can go to. And it's pretty much marketing and exposure for you. And you have a lead generation form or something like that that allows you to get access to the attendees. But it really focuses on the digital assets and landing page that you send people to. It's not you actually in the booth. There's the complete other end of the spectrum where it's literally a virtual video room, and you sit at your computer for however long the trade show is, and you wait for people to come in and out of your video room. So one is definitely more on making sure you've got your digital game in place. The other is, and it's, I guess, less time consuming. The other end of it is more time consuming. You've got to, be at your video ready for people to come in and out. So I think one key thing is trade shows come in a lot of different flavors. And so it's really on you to research that and see what kind of trade show it is and what you're willing to commit to. So here's an example of the Fancy Food Show. They are going to have both an in-person and a virtual component. They're calling it Fancy Food 24/7. This is definitely on the end of having this, what they're calling a digital showroom, where you can have videos, product catalogs, images, line sheets, any of that sort of thing. You can invite customers and buyers. One key thing that a lot of these trade shows do is they do matchmaking. So I think it's really, most trade shows, or a lot of trade shows, you'll have an account manager. And I think it's really important to connect with that account manager and make sure you're taking advantage of all of the amenities that the trade show is offering. Key thing in doing these virtual trade shows is choosing the right ones. And this is very similar to if you were actually going to a real trade show and investing these thousands of dollars. So it may not be as costly on the front end, but it is your time. So really thinking about what type of lead generation will this create. Some it's more open to the public, others it's very, very specific to buyers and other sorts of things. So do your research, think about what kind of lead generation will this create. Talk to the account managers, talk to the sales associates for these trade shows, and ask a lot of questions and understand, who is the audience and how does the platform work? Is it one of these where you have to just sit in front of the computer for 2 days and wait for people to come in and out? Or is it one where you just do your digital showroom? And you've got to make the determination, which one do you find more interesting for you? What is the cost and requirements for your time? Again, there is no standard template for these trade shows. So really understand what is going to be required of you. And I think also looking at what are the key features. Some are offering appointments, live chat, video, marketing opportunities, lead generation, and tracking, and also matchmaking. So is the trade show committed to making this a success for you, or are they just trying to check the box? There are a lot of trade shows out there where they've got a lot of sponsors and they've just got to put forward an event. And they're seeing it as a short term, hey, we just got to get this year done and then we'll go back to our normal thing next year. So just really think about, is this trade show investing in the success of you as an exhibitor? And make sure you're asking all of those key questions. Some best practices that we've seen is understand what your platform is and the digital assets you need to make it a successful booth and attract attendees. Think about, the trade show is going to have those cards as attendees are kind of scrolling through and deciding who are they going to go into their booth. So think about that. It's probably the most important thing you can do when you're thinking about your trade show. What does that cover card look like? What does your short description look like? And how are you going to attract those attendees to come into your booth? Maybe there's some kind of like gamification aspect. Maybe there's, samples that you're going to offer to anyone that comes into your booth. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do related to that. So I would say, definitely look at what are those key digital assets and make sure that you're putting your best foot forward in terms of what does that homepage look like that's going to get people to click in. Have a marketing strategy and utilize your account rep. Just like when you go in person, you don't just show up. You make sure that you're, doing all of the pre-marketing, the social media, pre-booking meetings for the buyers, really doing your homework. Utilize the special event services. Sometimes they're doing things like webinars or all things that can get you more exposure. And finally, especially if it's to a broader audience and not just to wholesale buyers, making sure that your e-commerce site is easily accessible so you can make on-the-spot sales. So make sure that's linked. You know, there are plenty of trade shows that, you know, their kind of main driver is getting referrals to your site. So make sure that that is really tightened up. You know, you may want to do a special landing page that goes right to a certain part of your site. So think about what is that user experience when somebody comes through the trade show and then into your website. Some marketing opportunities. Pay attention to the real estate you get on the trade show's website. Take advantage of opportunities. Many of them are doing webinars and they're doing different events. They're doing breakout rooms. There are many more ways than just having your digital showroom that's part of these trade shows now. So think about that. How do you join a webinar? Request to speak on a topic. You know, say that you're, you know, if you're a food product, maybe you do a cooking show with your food product, or maybe you do a tasting. So there's all sorts of things you can do that are more, you know, event driven, or in the webinars to drive people to get to know who you are. I think more than ever with virtual trade shows, you're not going to have somebody just walking the floor and coming across you. What's happening a lot of times is there are even more exhibitors. So you've got to figure out what are the other things that you can do related to the trade show to get attention and to get more people to know who you are within that trade show. And then also just make sure you have a mechanism for collecting email addresses of attendees or people that you want to speak to in your booth. And then finally, just you know, utilize matchmaking abilities. Many of them will have matchmaking with buyers. So put your name in there, have the keywords that you want in making sure that you get those matchmaking opportunities. That's a quick overview of best practices and how we're thinking about virtual trade shows right now. Remember, they are marketing opportunities just like anything else. So think about them as a way for you to get exposure and you know, a great way to expand your reach beyond Hawaii.
Brittany, that was great. Wonderful. Thank you. There's, we'll have questions at the end, but there's just a couple quick questions that popped up. One from Lori. Is this the first time the Fancy Food Show is doing a virtual show? And if they did one last year, how did it go?
So I don't know the answer to that question. I know that they have not done it in the past. So, but I don't know the results of the one from last year. So I can look into that for you.
I completely agree with you that the virtual trade show platform is not going to go away. I think most of our audience, obviously we're an export related community, most of our audience is thinking about trade shows in foreign countries. And I think particularly the foreign trade shows are not going to go away. I think some US domestic trade shows will come back potentially even later this year, but certainly in 2022. But a lot of, as you can see from the Olympics in Tokyo right now, a lot of things are not going to come back in person in Japan, Korea, China, Taiwan, other places where our Hawaii companies are interested in. So I think our companies have to get used to these virtual trade shows and how to participate and maximize their benefit there. I also completely agree with you that there is no standardization, meaning one trade show you attend this week could look and feel completely different from the trade show you attend next week. And I have not seen any standardization there at all. I was curious though, have you seen a difference in the cost to attend a virtual trade show versus a traditional in-person trade show? And with that, I'm just speaking about the booth. Obviously, you don't have hotels and flights and meals and that sort of thing, but just the registration fee to have a virtual booth in the exhibition. What are those costs like?
Yeah, so there is no standardization there as well. Some there, and especially last year, some were free. and they were allowing people to join for free. Others continued their normal booth rate at the same exact, rates that had been in prior years. So I can't say, that there's one way to go about it. I feel like this year, though, and doing my research in the last week, there are a ton of hybrid trade shows that are happening now, where they're doing a smaller in-person event and then they're doing a larger digital footprint. So I would definitely say look out for that.
Okay, great. With that, we'll take a brief pause and we'll move on to our next speaker, which is quite interesting because can you see Leanne right now? Okay, this is a virtual meeting inside of a virtual meeting. It's quite meta. So Leanne Choi runs Pacific Rim Concepts out of Kaneohe, and she's running the Made in Hawaii Festival this year with the Hawaii Food Manufacturers Association. And she has a great deal of experience with managing virtual trade shows and not just attending them. So I asked her to speak, but unfortunately she couldn't make it at this time. However, I recorded this video with her yesterday, and I'll play that. It's about 18 minutes long, and it's just like she is here with us in person. And then if there's any questions at the end, I can take them and forward them to Leanne, but I also will include her contact information. And then at the end, we'll circle back. And if there's any questions for me or for Brittany or things you'd like me to ask Leanne, let me know. So here's Leanne Choi right now. To be able to have a recording of Leanne Choi. She's gracious enough to help us with her experience with the Made in Hawaii Festival and others. Leanne's company is Pacific Rim Concepts in Kaneohe, and she has quite a bit of experience in this area of virtual trade shows, and that's why we've asked her to present today. So aloha, Leanne, thank you for being here. We'll jump right in because I know you have limited time. Can you tell us briefly about yourself and about Pacific Rim Concepts?
Great, thank you. Pacific Rim Concepts is 20 years old. We're a professional conference organizer. We specialize in 3-day association and government conferences, usually in the areas of conservation, marine and fishery sciences, and health. My background is in the travel industry management. I worked for 10 years at the Hilton Hawaiian Village in catering and convention services. And then I opened the Hawaii Convention Center as the event manager there. And then after that, started my own company 20 years ago. So have quite a bit of experience in meetings, conventions, and association conferences. This year, due to COVID, we pivoted, and we'll be coordinating the Made in Hawaii Festival. It will be a live event in November at the Ala Moana Center with 400 exhibitors. We anticipate a crowd of 40,000 people over the course of the 4 days. So it's quite a different type of event that we're coordinating, but no fear, we can get this done. We've managed to build the event between February and April. We were able to build the event and then start soliciting for vendors in May. And we're getting ready to launch the ticket sales, which will be online ticket sales by time entry, and that'll launch on August 20 for the November show.
Great, that's great to hear. All right, I'm going to share your screen just so that your website is in the background here and people can see what your organization is all about. I love your tagline, we bring aloha to every event. As you know, our mission at the Hawaii Pacific Export Council is to teach our local companies and mentor them and help them with the exporting process that involves many different things, finance and logistics, what have you. But a big part of that is marketing. A big part of marketing is attending trade shows. And DBET has several pavilions that they buy into every year and allow our local companies to get in at a very heavily subsidized cost, which is much cheaper than if the companies went on their own. Some of the shows, I think, are going to come back in person in the next several months, and certainly in 2022. But many of the international shows aren't. And we're still going to be attending virtual trade shows later this year, 2022. And I'm in some markets, maybe even beyond that. So it could be that for some of our companies in Hawaii, virtual trade shows are here to stay. And maybe that's a good thing, that it's cheaper in some ways. I mean, travel is not there, but certainly when you're trying to get out and meet customers and so-called press the flesh, shaking hands and bowing to people in person, it's not that easy when you're just doing things virtually. But with your expertise, hopefully we can help people get through this. So my question, Leanne, is really, what do you see companies doing that are successful when they're attending these virtual trade shows? What are they doing before the show to get ready? What are they doing during the show? And then what do they do after the show to follow up?
Okay. So signing up for a virtual exhibition, one of the first questions you need to ask them is, what platform are you doing this on? There's a lot of new software that have come out that meeting planners are using in the virtual world. And some of them, depending on the robustness of it, you could go simple where like a Zoom meeting and you have breakouts and your exhibitors are in the breakout rooms, or you have platforms where exhibitors are in its own section. Exhibitors have the opportunity to upload documents or videos that people can click on. You could, upload your pricing sheet. And then there are parts of those virtual platforms where you have like visitation hours. So you actually get to meet your attendees. And in some of those cases, I mean, I've looked at several events and it could be like, our exhibits are open from this time to this time. And so the question is, how long do I have to be sitting in this room waiting for someone to show up? So you want to ask, what is the format? What is the timing that is involved? And ask those detailed questions of the platform, because it's going to require you to prepare documents, video. It's like creating, like we said, it's advertising and marketing. So you need to create pieces for people to have a visual of what and who and what you're selling. Can
I interrupt and ask you, if our companies were going to make a video, what is there a maximum length that is, or is there an optimal length of video that's good?
Well, I think no more. You just want them to get a snippet. So I wouldn't do it longer than 3 minutes. And, probably your budget won't even allow more than that either, because 3 minutes will cost you quite a bit just to make a video. Yeah, most of them have like, you upload a video, it could be as simple as what I've done in some of my cases was like, open a Zoom link, record myself, and then that's the video that I submitted. There's other software, like you could do a PowerPoint and then attach an audio to that, and then it turns it into a video. And I think that's an Adobe feature that is available. So there's low cost ways of making a video. But I think video being more interactive, lots of pictures, those people, I buy with your eyes, right? So, and pictures speak 1,000 words. So I think more visuals that you have is good. And
now, how does a company, how do you attract visitors to your individual virtual booth?
well, a lot of that is not dependent on you though. So a lot of that is dependent on the organizer, and pretty much they usually just say, come visit our exhibitors. Unless if they are able to give you a list, or if you are familiar, like say it's a show that you always go to, I'm sure you've collected a database of buyers that come and visit you all the time. You will want to email them in advance and let them know, hey, I'm going to be at this virtual show. Come and visit me. I haven't, I'd love to see you, right?
How about for social media as well? Should you be posting to your social media accounts that we're attending this virtual
Yes.
exhibition, and is it a booth, or how does it work in a virtual exhibition?
Yeah, so like I said, it depends on the format or the platform that the vendor is using. Some of those are booths. So I'm a proponent of using whatever mediums there are to advertise and market. So yes, social media, email blasts. If you know the city, or you want to put out an ad and let people know that you're coming and that you're, depending on your audience, right, that you're trying to reach. Yeah. So you want to use those avenues.
How about following up after the show? Is there any tips you've learned about how to do that? I suppose that there's a lot of things that are like a regular in-person trade show where you email and text or to contact the customers, but I'm curious if there's anything you've learned about a virtual specific exhibition.
So some virtual formats, you can just tell them to put in the chat their email address, or you yourself, like, Rob, you're showing my website. You would post your website or your contact information. Like you could put it on your virtual background, and this is my contact info so people can log it in. You can ask them to upload their information. Another idea is you set up like a contact Google form or something like that. You send that link out and you have people fill in the information so they can be like starting a conversation with you of what they're interested in. That's another way to capture, because a lot of, like, even the exhibits that we do, we don't give out the attendees information. The exhibitor needs to extract it from the attendees themselves. So, it's like collecting business cards. So you need to be able to gather that from your attendees. But I think most importantly, in a virtual show, you want to be present, you want to be visual. If they tell you these are the hours for exhibits, make sure you have someone sitting there and someone looking at the camera ready to receive the people. You don't want to go, you as an attendee don't want to go into a room and there's no one there, or they're, some of them, they're not saying anything. They're just waiting for people to say something or ask them a question. But how can they ask you a question when all you see is mountains, You need to, you need to have like a share screen open with your products visually, or a store. You have to have your store visually appealing and enticing for them to say, hey, Rob, I see that stars. Can you tell me a little bit more about that gold star? What does it do? That way they can call it out and ask questions. But you do want to be, like, when people come up to your booth in a live show, you're saying, oh, hi, Robert, nice to meet you. Or what do you do? And you ask them, you just say, oh, I'm selling this. And, do you use this product in your work, or would you be interested? You start conversation, and you as the exhibitor needs to be the one to be the first to engage and make the attendees feel comfortable,
One of the things that I've been trying to get our local Hawaii companies to focus on is the made with aloha concept, that put as much Hawaii into the product and marketing as possible. And I know that you agree with that, but I'd like you to make a few comments for the record so that customers, the companies can hear that you agree with me and that we should be doing much more aloha in our product development and getting the message out.
Well, I failed today, but whenever I exhibit in a trade show, I like to have a haku headband on or a lei, because that just gives it away and everybody wants to talk to somebody from Hawaii, or it just creates the comfort and conversation. So yes, you should be spreading the aloha, wear your aloha shirt, wear a lei, and have that step made in Hawaii, you know, it just attracts attention.
Great. I'm glad to hear you agree. Can you tell us a bit about lessons learned? You've told us some things that we should be doing. Can you give us some things that we should definitely not be doing? Things you've seen people maybe not do a very good job in the virtual exhibitions that you've run or you've attended?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did mention one of them was that, you know, I showed up for a virtual exhibit room and everyone was just staring at me. Nobody said anything. And I don't know if I, as the attendee, was supposed to have my camera on or off, but I would think in the virtual exhibit room, you want your people to see who you are and you want to see who your attendees are. So instruct them to turn on their video, you know, and again, like have an introduction session, you know. Hi, I'm Rob from ABC store and I'm Leanne, you know, so create conversations. Yeah, you need to be interactive. And like I said, have visuals, do a share screen, a PowerPoint, or have a video to show. You could, you know, in that short period of time, you could have a video running and then then you start talking. But that's why I said maybe like Rob, we asked about how long the video should be. It shouldn't be too long because you don't want them to come in and then sneak out because your video is just going too long and nobody said anything, right? So maybe a short little video and then start talking about your products and getting to meet the people that are watching or attending your event.
Are you aware of any small companies or individuals in Hawaii who are experts at making these short videos, this 30 seconds up to 3 minutes?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I could drop a few names. I don't have them on hand.
Sure. If you could let me know some just by email or text.
Yeah.
I'd like to know some of those because I do think that we need to get more of our companies making some of these short videos that are professionally done. Get the word out into the world about the products, because I think our images of Hawaii can substitute for language problems, language barriers if we run into them.
Right. And the other thing is, you know what I've run into, like for the Made in Hawaii Festival, the festival is 25 years. Some of those vendors have been there from the very beginning, but they haven't graduated into the virtual platform, so they don't have an e-commerce site. So if you're going to be participating in a virtual exhibit, you better have an e-commerce site also to send people to, and that needs to be, you know, a little bit of quality also, right? How you build that.
Sure. That makes sense.
I think the challenge for the Made in Hawaii Festival vendors attracting the Japanese, the Japanese trade show, is sending product to Japan. So that's something maybe, you know, as an organization, we come up with some other ideas on how they can get their products to Japan more economically.
Great, I'm glad to hear that. Well, that's all the questions I have for you, Leanne. I really appreciate your time. I'm sure the audience is going to love hearing your comments. And I'm going to briefly put up your contact information here at the bottom if anybody would like to reach out to you and get some specific professional advice. But thank you very much. Good luck with the Made in Hawaii Festival. We look forward to hearing all about the success of that.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
No, aloha. Thank you.
Aloha.
Great. Thank you again, Leanne. I have just a couple quick comments on some things where I think certainly Brittany and Leanne were agreeing. It seems first and foremost that as an exhibitor at um, a virtual exhibition, that you're really going to have to develop a relationship with the conference organizer, the exhibitor, exhibition organizer. That seems to be a common theme here. I think both would agree that images and videos are very important, short videos with lots of Hawaii in the background. I think that that means a lot. And Leanne's comment about wearing a lei or a haku band or something to that effect, an aloha shirt and aloha dress, I think that that's very important. I think Leanne also had a really important comment that as this is an export-oriented webinar, we're thinking about trade shows that are in Japan or Europe or somewhere not in the United States, and the time zones are going to be way off. So instead of traveling to Japan, we're going to have somebody present at the computer during Japan time when the Japan buyers are coming through the virtual exhibition and coming to your virtual space. So you need to be adjusted to that Japan time. But I would also add, I think you really need somebody who can speak Japanese, because most of the buyers that you're going to find at a Japanese trade show will have very limited English. And it would just be much better if you had somebody who could help you speaking Japanese and answering questions in Japanese or Korean or Brazilian, I mean, Portuguese, whatever, wherever you're trying to attend a virtual trade show. I think that both Brittany and Leanne would agree that before the show, messaging to the customers, either some combination of a mass mailing or social media or a direct contact somehow, if you're able to let them know about the trade show and what your virtual space will be. And if you can pre-establish a time to meet them virtually and go over your products, I think that that is critical and could be very helpful. With that, I'll open it up to Q&A. I know that there were a few comments that came in. There's one question was, how much is it to participate in the Made in Hawaii Festival? I don't know the answer to that. Leanne would certainly know the answer to that, and we can ask her. There was another question about how do we sign up for these virtual trade shows as a vendor and as a purchaser? Well, DBET will have several trade shows that they buy into. Those are called the Hawaii pavilions. And then our local companies can get into those pavilions at a greatly subsidized rate. I don't know what that rate is. I don't think it's fully understood yet for, say, the Tokyo International Gift Show this year, how that will work. In the past, when it was a live trade show in person, a small Hawaii company could get into the TIGS, Tokyo International Gift Show, for about $1,500, $1,500 for the space, which is an incredible incentive, because if you were to try to do it alone, you could easily spend $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. Really, the sky's the limit on a trade show booth. So these pavilions are a great way to get in at as low a cost as possible. But DBET's done a wonderful job of creating this very Hawaii-themed pavilion, and it does get a lot of traffic just simply because of the decorations and the way that the pavilion is set up. And then you have a little mini booth and you decorate it as you see fit. But for a virtual trade show, I think that that isn't completely understood yet, but should be soon, within the next month or so, because TIGS fall 2021 is coming up in October, and we'll have to understand what's going on quite soon. And I suspect, after hearing what Brittany and Leanne both had to say, that we certainly need to have a more expanded relationship with that show organizer, so we can understand the platform better and see what the expectations are and how we can put our products out there and using the videos and images and other things that we learned about today. Are there any more questions? Questions that came in that I missed? Brittany, before we go, Sean is saying that the TIGS cost is $200 for the booth. Okay, that's quite reasonable. I think if you were to go to TIGS on your own outside of the pavilion, I suspect it's more expensive. I don't know what that cost is. Okay. Brittany, any final comments from you? If not,
No final comments from me other than just to say thank you for having me and excited that I was able to join today.
great. We greatly appreciate your expertise in this topic. As we know, this is a topic I think that isn't quite gelled, as you would probably agree. There's many different virtual trade show platforms that are out there, and I think that our companies are going to have to be flexible and adjust to it. But your point, a major takeaway from this is that it's not going to go away. So don't plan to skip one of these upcoming trade shows because you think it's going to get back to, I'm using air quotes here, normal next year, because I think for the majority of these international trade shows, it's not going to be normal next year, maybe the year beyond, and maybe never. And as you said, Brittany, it's a growth industry. So I think that some of these platforms will start to gel into a more common format that we're all pretty much used to. And maybe there's just two or three competing platforms rather than hundreds. Hopefully we get to that point soon. But with that, I'll close it. Thank you, everybody, for attending. This is, again, our last webinar of this current HiSTEP cycle 2021. Look for an upcoming schedule of 2022 in the next couple of months. And again, if you have any topics that you'd like us to cover in the 2022 cycle, please let us know. You can email me or text me directly. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your morning in Hawaii. Mahalo.